and you've just heard that we are recording today's session. So it's up to you whether you want to leave your cameras on or off. It's your call. It's great to see so many of you online, and I can see a few familiar names as well as some new names, which is fantastic. And we're looking forward to engaging with you over the next 2 days. So next slide. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Suzanna. I'm Head of Data and Community at CCDC, and your other hosts for the next 2 days are going to be Ilaria. So Ilaria joined us as our Education and Outreach Officer last year, and you'll be hearing from her during the talk tomorrow. And then we're joined by Juergen Harter, our Chief Executive Officer at CCDC, and he'll be giving a welcome following on from this kind of housekeeping introduction from me. So we'll be leading you through and guiding you through the next 2 days, and we've got some great speakers lined up for you as well. So you've heard a bit about who your hosts are for today, but we wanted to hear from you. So we'd like you to introduce yourself in the chat box. I can see Samuel and Claudia have already done that. So we've got some attendees from Ghana and Argentina. But if you haven't introduced yourself already, then now's your chance to go to the chat box, which you should be able to see on the right-hand side, and add your name, institution, and if you want, what you want to get from this meeting. So what are you hoping to hear or learn from in the next 2 days? So we've got Mike, one of our speakers from Temple University in Philadelphia. So we are going to be recording the session. Ooh, can we just go back onto the previous slide? We are going to be recording the session, so if you could mute yourselves during the presentations, that would be appreciated, but do pop in any questions you've got during the talks as we go through into the chat box, and we'll have time to go to those questions at the end of each talk. And obviously you can open your mic at that point too. So I can see a few other people, so a few people from the US, Illinois, Indiana, Venezuela, Southampton, so quite a global community that we're talking to today, Innsbruck. Nice to see so many of you online. So as I've said, we are recording, so you can turn your cameras on or off. Where we've got permission, we will be recording the talks, and we will be making those recordings available. So we hope that over the next 2 days, like us, you'll be able to listen, learn and enjoy from the talks that we've got. Can we go to the next slide? So why are we meeting today, and what are we trying to gain from our CSD Educators user group meeting? So at the CCDC, our main mission is to advance structural science for the public benefit. One of the primary activities we do is create and disseminate the Cambridge Structural Database, the database of over 1 million crystal structures. But it isn't just data that we do at our centre. So alongside the data, we have a team of software developers. They help us get the data into the building to curate and create the CSD, but also help you search and analyse and learn new insights from the data. Alongside our software side, we've got a team of scientific researchers, often working in collaboration with industry and academia, and trying to learn from the data and from our software. And I think of most importance for today is the education and outreach we do. And obviously that's touching on advancing structural science for the public benefit. And it's something that we hold very close to our hearts. So we want as many people to be able to use the data and learn from the data. And an important part of that is the education and outreach. Next slide, please. And to help us on our mission. We are a non-profit organisation, so that means we're a charity, and as a non-profit organisation we can use the funds that we raise to advance education in the chemical sciences. So we're going to be hearing over the course of the next 2 days a bit more about what that means that we can do. So we'll be hearing about some of the sponsored PhD programs that we do, some of the resources for teaching and learning chemistry that we're able to make available, and some of the outreach activities. And I think it's important to remember that we exist for the community and we work with the community. So without you, we wouldn't be able to do any of the things that we can do. And we hope that you are part of our journey and kind of the wider CCDC family. And so if we go to the next slide, we can see that we're going to be hearing from some of those people in the community that we've been working with, or that we think are going to tell some great stories over the next couple of days. So on the agenda for today, we can see that we've got Mike before the break, and then after the break we're going to be hearing from Jess and Bill before we do a wrap up and a poll. And before we start with those community driven talks, we wanted to hear more from our CEO, Juergen Harter. He's going to give us a welcome and a bit of a reflection on CCDC and where we are in 2021. So I'm going to pass over to Juergen for his welcome. And great to see some more places on the map from our attendees in the chat box as well. So over to you, Juergen.
Thank you very much, Suze. It's so great to see so many of you, or see so many familiar faces and names in the chat box. Thanks for being here. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of you online, wherever you've dialed in from. I guess this is nowadays the new way of working, isn't it? Fully digital around the globe. So we're doing it in this meeting this afternoon and tomorrow afternoon. And as a matter of fact, we've been doing it for a whole year now, 12 months, haven't we? So it's been quite something if you think about 2020 and 2021 with the pandemic ongoing. So I just want to say a few words on the CCDC and where we got to, I suppose, over the 60 years of our existence, and the fact that throughout our existence we have always actually cared a lot or immensely about education and outreach. It is a very, very important component or very important aspect of us realizing our mission and our purpose in advancing structural chemistry around the world, with all of you and for all of you, and I guess in conjunction and collaboration with the wonderful sort of things that you guys are doing around the world. So we as a center, we always want to support that and help advance the science. And you can see a bunch of key major advances over the 60-year period from 1953 with the structure of DNA, etc., etc. I mean, clearly structural sciences played quite a key role over the decades in pushing things further forward. I think we even got to the 2012, the Higgs boson, that's the so-called God particle. So it gets rather interesting at that point, and lots of quantum chemistry involved at that point. So yeah, what is next? I suppose that's a fair question. I certainly hope, from my point of view as the CEO of the CCDC, that we would be here still in 100 years' time, and that things would have further grown, and that we would have trained up and educated and built up the next generation of structural scientists around the planet, really, because that's what needs to continue to happen. So as I say, it's all a key part of our mission, and I'm grateful that you're here this afternoon, tomorrow afternoon, to help advance things. So could I have our next slide, please? As Suze helpfully already pointed out, the CCDC as a charitable organization has a few key remits, or a few key areas that we care about. Generally, we want to advance the chemistry or crystallography for the public benefit. And I have to say, we couldn't be doing any of this if it wasn't for the worldwide community of wonderful crystallographers and folks who have produced the data in the first place and submitted it to us over the decades. So we obviously will continue to do our best to store all the data and to ensure the highest quality of that data. So yeah, we're more or less the guardians of the CSD, the Cambridge Structural Database, and that is growing year on year on year, something like 60,000 or 80,000 structures each year now, which is quite a high growth rate. Of course, we also have produced in the last decade some fantastic scientific software, which I'd like to think that we're fairly responsive there in terms of how we're evolving our software suites and how that's growing into the future. So again, we're quite dependent on collaborating with all of you to work on novel ideas to advance our software suites. So we have the materials suite, the discovery suite, and soon we're going to have a particle suite and also a theory suite. So there is more coming on the software side, which I'm hoping that you all will enjoy that a lot. Education and outreach, we're going to talk a lot in the coming few hours and tomorrow. We very much passionately care about this, and as I say, we want to help train up the next generation of structural scientists. I think it's all been declining a bit around the world in terms of the training that folks are receiving there, and maybe there's just not enough scientists in that space. So I think we have to find novel ways to get that built back up again and make it all grow, because as I think most of you might all agree that structural chemistry is quite fundamental and it sits underneath so many things. So it is very, very important that the next generation has full knowledge of what they're doing in that space, helping to advance the science. So we are, of course, also not just a data repository caring about data quality, but we care about top-class research. And we're very collaborative in how we do research around industry, but also within academic collaborations around the world. So again, we're quite global in that way, and we're open for business and open for more collaborations, not just in the UK, but around Europe and US, and also in the Far East now more and more. So could I have my next slide, please? I think you've all seen this a million times already, so I'm not going to dwell too much on it. Just to say what a phenomenal global effort it's been since the 70s to build up 1.1 million high-quality crystal structures in the CSD. It is more or less exponential growth here, probably not quite exponential to be fair to the mathematicians amongst us, but it has been quite some growth, and it's coming from around the globe. You can see China quite high here. There is thousands of depositions coming out of China. So I think China and the US, they're probably giving each other a good run for the money here, which is okay. I mean, it's a global effort, and structural chemistry happens anywhere on the planet. And we happen to be in Cambridge, UK, but that's by the by. We care for the whole world in that sense to look after these molecules. So let's go to the next slide, please. We have, of course, a wonderful data team, editorial team, who curate and enhance the quality of all the data that comes in from around the world. And this is so important. It is absolutely key that you combine the best scientific brains with great processes and great quality control and great workflows to ensure top quality. And this is especially important in the age of AI and machine learning and deep learning, because the last thing anybody wants is bad quality data going into any of your algorithms. So I firmly believe that top quality data is essential to learn more from any AI method or machine learning or deep learning that might be applied on structural chemistry data sets. So basically, big point here, you want to work with the best data and the best algorithms, not just very clever algorithms and then put things on bad data. Because garbage in, garbage out still holds true. So work with the best data. Let's go to the next slide. I mentioned earlier that we are a global research institute, and we're very keen to collaborate wherever we can. And over the decades, I think we've published something like 850 publications. That was very often done in multiple collaborations with lots of academic institutes. We want to keep it this way. And more recently, we've even published a bunch of compendiums or kind of collections of publications with academia, more or less driven by the fact that we've reached a milestone of 1 million structures, which all of that creates new possibilities. And it's just wonderful to see this all coming through in CRISP-Eng.com. And thank you to everyone who's actually contributed to any of these articles. Of course, we want to drive this further forward and publish even more. I think we should reach the 1,000 milestone or go beyond the 1,000 publications. And push novel scientific areas further ahead. So if you have any good ideas and you want to collaborate with us, please do check with our science teams. Next slide, please. One other aspect I briefly want to highlight is the fact that structural chemistry is obviously a highly international effort, and it's not only the CCDC as an institution that cares about the data. I mean, obviously we have the PDB, we have the ICSD over in Karlsruhe, Germany for the inorganic structures. We have the ICDD for the diffraction patterns over in America. And over the years, we have continued to drive stronger relationships with all of these other institutes, because we firmly believe that science is a collaborative effort, and we need to be internationally connected with all these other institutes. So, I mean, you know, the PDB is going to celebrate their 50th year's existence in May, and we'll be there at that symposium as well. And it's lovely to have the PDB more or less as our sister institution. And it's lovely for me as a German to also be working with the ICSD over in Karlsruhe, Germany, to grow things there. And same for ICDD. We've done a new collaborative deal earlier in last year with ICDD to grow things in that aspect. So if there's any other data sources or data institutes or places that you feel we should collaborate deeper and stronger, again, do flag this up to us. We're very open to building these collaborations. Next slide, please. Briefly on our portfolio, the CSD itself, that's our sort of CSD core. You can almost think it like, you know, Intel used to say Intel Inside. If you have a chip from Intel inside your PC, I guess for us it's CSD Inside. If you want good structural chemistry data, you should have the CSD core inside. And then on top of that, you build the software and you utilize the software to generate insights, to learn new stuff, to push the knowledge. That's still what we're doing. And obviously we can learn a lot, you know, for geometry, for interactions, packing, etc., etc. I think we've got several hundreds of different functions in our software suites, which is, it's quite a plethora of things you can calculate and learn and do when you're sitting on top of the wonderful data that we have. Next slide, please. And we have actually bundled all these different software suites up to form a CSD Enterprise offering, which is highly discounted and available to academics around the world and universities. I think it's about a 95% discount. And it contains all these wonderful components from Dash to Mercury to the CSD Python API, which gives everybody a lot of flexibility to access our data and all the functionality that I just talked about earlier. It's available via the Python API. And then there's, of course, all the components out of the Discovery Suite or out of the Materials or the Particles Suite. They all found their way into the CSD Enterprise. And as academics or educators and students, you can have the full access to that CSD Enterprise at a heavily discounted price, which I think is a wonderful thing that we're able to do this for all of you. Next slide, please. As a center, we've been running so many events, and I guess pre-pandemic, we've been flying around the world and we've been showing up at all sorts of conferences. And I guess one day we'd quite like to get back to that way of operating. But over the last 18 months, we've converted everything to virtual. So we've done so many virtual things, from WhatsApp customer webinars to science festivals now that have gone virtual. And we've teamed up with BCA, the British Crystallography Association, BACG, for their online meeting, the spring meeting, ACS meeting. I mean, any good meeting that deals with chemistry where we should be present, we'd like to be there and showcase what can and should be done with structural chemistry. So again, if you have new ideas or you want to put on something virtual with us, sponsoring it or participating or helping some events along, we're very happy to participate there. Of course, we would love for you all to come and join in the running events that we have planned over 2021. Most of the events will still be all virtual over this year, of course, due to the pandemic. Next slide, please. Just a couple words on our database evolution and how our overall architecture evolves. I think it's safe to say that we're spending probably six-figure sums or more than $1 million by far, actually, working with software development, which is a very strong function inside the CCDC, to advance our database technology and our storage and how we can basically manage the data going forward, i.e., for example, pushing it towards the cloud and other such things, and creating a more unified platform so we can have a modern way of searching everything. Because in some areas we're still a bit too fragmented with legacy technologies and older ways of searching, or maybe some legacy type coding technologies, all of which we have to come out of and modernize. And that is not an easy thing to do, but I think ultimately this will benefit the entire community, because things will be faster, better, you know, more distributed. You can, I guess, link to things behind firewalls, so we can combine more data sets in a quicker and better way. We'll have more flexibility. We can extend it to more complicated molecules, proteins, etc., and other big, huge, complicated structures. As you all know, structures do get more complicated, so our database technology has to keep up with all of that. So this whole project will continue to run throughout 2021, possibly even a bit longer, because it is such an important thing to advance our architecture and make it future-proof for the 21st century. Next slide, please. We are also, not only are we growing in terms of the data that we're adding from the community and for the community, but we have grown, I think, over the last 3-4 years from 42 people to now 89. And just in the last few months, we've added 5 or 6 people, which is fantastic. And there's another 10 coming in the next few months. One of the key additions have recently been Dr. Susan Reutzel-Edens from Eli Lilly in the US. She joined us as our head of science and is helping us to unify all our many scientific efforts that we're running with the scientific teams. And she will also help coordinate and work with our very strong scientific advisory board, which is an international panel that will help us to drive our science further forward. So we're very much looking forward to working with Susan here. We've had a few other people join, very important other areas like user experience and user interfaces. We've had an expert join us there from the EBI, and other good folks joining in all the different functions of the CCDC. So it's nice to have both people growth as well as revenue growth as an organization. Because as you know, as a charity, we always reinvest all our surplus, which we may generate in any given year, back into advancing the science and the data quality and serving the community by good things like education and providing outreach. Next slide then. This just brings me to say thank you to all of you, and I hope, or I wish, that you all have a productive and a really interactive and helpful afternoon, or whichever time zone you're in. It might be your morning if you're from the US, but it's a global thing, education. We're doing it digitally around the world, so I'm grateful you're all here today and tomorrow. Let's make the most of this platform. Let's make the most of the fact that we know each other. Let's challenge each other as well. Let's make new feedback, new suggestions. We're welcome to hear it. We want your feedback. We want your challenges. We want your ideas. We will act on them. And certainly we like to communicate with all of you to make sure we can collectively advance the science. And as I say, very importantly, train the next generation. We need those next scientists understanding structural chemistry, really, and structural science. So thank you all for being here, and thank you to all the speakers who are participating in the next couple of days. So back over to, is it Sophie or Suze? I forget.
It's me. Thank you, Juergen. If you do have any questions for Juergen, then do put them in the chat box, and we'll deal with those during the course of this afternoon.